as far as what copywriting today looks like, modern copywriting is like anything that's being written right now. And whenever we think of copywriting, the majority of the time we think of online content, right? Not print content. And the first pillar, whenever I talk about these 7 points, the first one is always you focus on who you're writing for. So most often that's our client, that's our customer that we're trying to get in the door. And then the second point is just everything you create, think about how to really do high quality and how to be super relevant.
Welcome to the Magnificent Marketing Podcast, where we interview the top marketing experts in the world and keep you up to date on all the changes and best practices to help you grow your business and stay on the cutting edge. Welcome to the show. Hello, everyone. I'm here today with Julia McCoy, and Julia is a serial content marketer, blogger, author, and entrepreneur. She started Express Writers at the age of 19 and after teaching herself online writing. And today, her content agency has over 50 team members and thousands of worldwide clients. Julia also hosts the Write podcast and does a hashtag content writing chat, which is hashtag content writing chat, and is the best-selling author of So You Think You Can Write, the definitive guide to successful online writing. And today, we are going to be talking about modern copywriting. Must-know tips for today's marketing landscape. Julia, how are you doing today?
Good. I'm pumped up after that awesome intro.
Well, you did it. One thing I didn't know about you is I didn't realize you started it at the age of 19. That's insane. How did I mean obviously you know kind of says how you got into it, but just tell me about that real quick. That's very interesting. That's very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. So, at 19, I was going through college, actually. I was halfway through getting an RN degree. So I was halfway through that, and I realized, you know what, I think I'd make a terrible nurse. And I didn't realize that until halfway through, because I think better behind the scenes instead of on my feet, like right there in the moment. So I'm like, okay, I can't be a nurse and, help people and mess with anyone's life here.
Yeah.
So I quit nursing halfway through, and I decided to figure out how to make money doing something that I really love to do. I had always written ever since I was like a little kid. I wrote a book at 12 years old, a fiction novel. It actually got lost on a floppy disk. That's another story.
Oh, no.
I've always loved to write. And that's what I turned to when I'm like, okay, how can I go into a career that I love? And then it just plunged in, and I just taught myself freelance writing, and I had a really, really good knack for it. Got a lot of clients. I think I joined, it's called Upwork now, but back then it was called Odesk when I was 19. And I just joined Odesk, started a freelance profile, put up some writing samples, and I got clients the next day. And from there, it just took off. And within 3 months of teaching myself how to write, I had more clients than what I could handle. And that's when I decided to just go ahead and try to start a business.
Wow, that's awesome. And you really got in, and, well, you didn't get in at the right time. You were one of those, you were ahead of the game because writing became so much more valuable. It lost its value, I'd say, 3 to 6 years ago. And then I'd say about 2 to 3 years ago, there's become a lot more, demand for high quality writing and services like yours. So I don't know if you had that foresight or if, obviously everybody needs a little bit of luck in life, but man, you got into a great profession, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere. And I guess that'll kind of be what we get into a little bit about, modern copywriting and modern writing with the focus on high quality writing and doing it for, the audience and SEO. And again, we'll get into all of that. But so before we get into all your awesome tips, I would like for you to talk a little bit. You obviously have a ton of experience, been doing it for a long time. How has copywriting or writing changed over the years? And what are some of the main and overall differences that have taken place in your opinion?
Well, that is a great question to start with. I definitely see a distinct trail from when I began at 19 and 20 years old. So back then, whenever I started out, it definitely was luck walking into the industry at that time. And it came from a desire to figure out how to make money doing what I loved. So whenever I stepped into it, the The landscape back then, that was about 6 years ago, really looked like cheap SEO content, right? So that was the mindset. It was like, how fast can I get some SEO content up on my website? And that was all that marketers thought about. And it was like even publishing content on e-zine articles, like really cheap platforms where your brand does not have a chance to stand out. But that worked back then. It got their brand in the first 5 results of Google. So that SEO content, they were pushing it out fast. They were doing quantity. Today, it's really changed to quality, and that's become predominant above quantity. And that's what we're seeing with all of our clients. Like even people that I worked with 6 years ago, they have conformed, and I've seen them go from quantity mindset to, okay, we have to create something that is going to stand out, because otherwise we're just going to get lost in the sea of content. So it's really changed in terms of mindset.
Why do you think that's changed? Why do you think those changes came about?
So I followed a lot of the Google algorithm updates throughout the years, and the biggest one, I think, was Google Panda, and it's also called Farmer. So that update, and that was back in February of 2012, which is another proof that I walked in at the right time, back in 2011. So early 2012, everyone got hit for that low-quality content, like content farms got hit, people that were paying for links on like EDU sites that weren't at all related to their content. So all of that got severely hit by Google, and big sites saw drops overnight in their rankings. And it was drastic. It was like 3% of the entire web, millions of pages, lost their top rankings. And I actually had clients, like within that week of the algorithm update, they called me and they're like, Julia, what do? We lost all our rankings. So I kind of studied it together with them. And we looked at what better content that was ranking in the top 5 of Google. We studied what that looks like. So that's the type of content we created for them back then when they were, experiencing that de-ranking from the algorithm update. So Google has really pushed. They've really fielded the better content that we're seeing today. They started that with that Farmer update that really just canned a lot of the bad content, got it out of the top 5 rankings.
Yep. Yeah, that's, I was curious what you had to say, but yeah, that was my take on it as well. I think that's why the shift came where, we all kind of, it's the Google's the puppet master, right? And we're all the puppets. But I will say though, you kind of look at Google and Facebook sometimes as the big bad giants because that's how we've grown up to look at, big corporations are bad. But the reality of it is they're trying to do the right thing. They're trying to serve up, their job, their offering to the world is to have a search engine that you find what you're looking for. And so they penalized all the people who were doing it the shady ways just to get ranked, but what's ranking is a bunch of crap. So that's what brought about the changes, and now people like you have come in and help people along with that. So that's awesome. Now I've heard you speak on the 7 essential pillars of modern copywriting. Why don't you dig into this for us, because I think this will help people out there who are doing the writing themselves or considering it. Can I do all this, right? Do I need help? But why don't you speak of those so you can lead people at least down the right path when they are getting into their writing here.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so the 7 pillars of modern copywriting, that's something I put a blog around early this year, just figuring out what those 7 points were. And I think to start, as far as what copywriting today looks like, modern copywriting is like anything that's being written right now. And whenever we think of copywriting, the majority of the time we think of online content, right? Not print content. So this definitely applies to all online content. And the first pillar, whenever I talk about these 7 points, the first one is always you focus on who you're writing for. And just like you said, like Google has really helped us with this direction. It's all about the user. It's not about how can I, get a quick ranking or how can I get quick success on my content. You really have to think about the human that's actually reading your content. And that's what Google wants you to do. That's what you have to do to stand out today. So that would be the first thing to do, is to focus on your customer, who you're writing the content for, and who you're trying to attract. So most often, that's our client, that's our customer that we're trying to get in the door. So you really have to know who your ideal customer is. And a really great way to figure that out is to create a persona. And that's something that we've done for my agency. We created this persona after we surveyed several thousand of our clients, and we picked out their most common traits, and then we created that persona. So now we know exactly who we're talking to. We have a face. We have, it's a it's a fake name and a stock photo, but it represents the majority of our clientele. So that's really important to start with. And then the second point is just everything you create, think about how to really do high quality and how to be super relevant. So as you're creating content for your ideal reader, how can you create it best? And then how can you be super relevant to them, their interests? So kind of getting out of your shoes as a business and thinking of your reader and how can I be super relevant to them, their needs, their questions. So that's super important.
Now on that note, how do you and your team go about that? Obviously, you have your persona, but not everybody's going to be able to survey thousands of clients, or sometimes survey 5 or 10 clients. And some of it needs to come from what you already know. Just in my experience, some people are all about getting with their customers. Some people are shy about it. So you don't always have the opportunity to do it. There are a lot of people just don't feel okay with that. I don't know if you've experienced that as well, but so how do you deal with the different scenarios of knowing, what's exactly relevant? Do you do any steps? Do you do any research? How do you go about that?
Yes, that's a great question. That's actually a direction that you want to consider, and that's a really big question, I think, for businesses that don't have the existing audience to survey. So if they're coming from a place of, okay, this is a brand new audience, or there's just not enough people to survey, a really good tool to use that we've actually used as well is Facebook's Audience Insights. So it's completely free, and you just go to your advertising manager in Facebook, and then you can research the traits of, like, let's say you just have one buyer, right? One person that's bought from you. That's enough to go study their traits in Facebook's Audience Insights. So you can get a ton of data from Facebook.
Give me an example of studying the traits. Like, what are you looking at, and where do you find the trait?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're looking at their median income, you're looking at their interest, and then Facebook's Audience Insights will actually tell you the publications that they read consistently. Like if you're going after, let's say, a soccer mom, she might be reading Penny Hoarder, and that would be a great guest blog for you to approach and say, hey, can I write for you guys? That way you're getting in front of your ideal audience.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a great point, Julia. That is awesome. Because you're right. I mean, you got to focus on the customer, right? And then you got to be relevant to them. And you're like, okay, well, how the heck do I do that, right? Do I guess? Do I do this? And you can apply some logic just based on surveying your people in your company and say, hey, what are the top questions people are asking? What do we know about them already? But yeah, I definitely wanted to kind of get an answer for people who are struggling with that part. And I think you've given us some good direction on that. Is there anything else you want to add there? Anything else you all do as far as looking at keyword reports and what people are searching for? Anything else like that?
Yeah, so Facebook's Audience Insights, you could spend a couple hours there because it actually gives you, like, besides their interest, what different stores they actually shop in. So, like, that could be your advertisement whenever you set up a Facebook ad, let's say, and you target the people that follow that company. Then right there, you have your ideal audience because they're already looking at that publication. But besides Facebook, one way that we also kind of get some insights on our ideal audience member is once you have, and again, like you just need one person to profile, right? One person that's bought from you that you know for sure has trusted you enough to give you money in exchange for your services. So once you have just one person, you can actually go and look up their social media profiles and get just a ton of insights. And you don't have to do some deep stalking. Just look at their Twitter, look at their LinkedIn. And from LinkedIn, you can actually see what groups they're in and sometimes what conferences they're interested in. And that will give you some other ideas of what to do with your marketing, like where to go when it comes to conferences. We were able to find all of that out after we created our persona. We found out that our ideal audience member is at CM World. And then we found out that from their Twitter, they really love Business Insider as a guest blog platform. So that's another platform that we're trying to go after right now. So there's just so much data you can get if you go look at their footprint online on social media. And Twitter especially, people share a lot of content there, so you're going to get some great insights on what platforms they like to read the best, which will give you an idea of, you know, how to model your content after the content that they read.
All right, very cool, very cool. All right, I believe we're on your third pillar.
Yes. Yes, so the third one is all about social media, which we just talked about. And, you know, that's where the copywriter today really has to know how to use social media platforms. And it's so important. You know, sometimes I see that there is a line drawn between content marketing and social media. But if you're a modern copywriter that really knows what you're doing and you're able to serve all your clients, you need to know some elements of social media marketing. That is just so important. It's so integrated into our content marketing landscape. So you have to know how to adapt your content to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, like just writing short tweets, for example, that are super catered to your audience member. And maybe you're just pulling out one really good sentence from an article, and that's what you share on Twitter. That can do so much better than just the headline of the article. So you have to know how to create short posts for social media, as well as writing that long-form content that goes on a blog or a web page.
Yeah, and I think within the last 12 to 18 months, maybe even 2 years now, and I was always wondering why I'm not hearing more about this. And I know you have had success without it. You also got in the game a little bit earlier, but you also obviously are contributing, doing really high-level stuff. So you might not need as much of it because you have a pretty darn good audience already. But there's been a lot more talk about making sure you do have some ad distribution dollars set aside for your plan here, because it's not a field of dreams, right? It's not you build it and they will come, because I think that's where there's some misunderstanding is people put it up there and then they're staring at no shares for days, right? So do you agree with that? Again, I know we've talked about this in the past, and I know you had success with no advertising dollars, but I think it needs to be addressed and talked about for people getting going, and even some larger companies. Do you agree that you need to have some ad dollars set aside to target, your content to your target audience?
Yes, great question. And like you said, super relevant, because that's really necessary whenever you create content, and especially if you have a very low number audience. So if your audience is new or you're just starting out, that's where you really should be definitely putting some money on social media ads. And it's interesting, I just took a look at this, but Facebook ad return is really high right now. So out of like all the advertisement money you could put some dollars into, Facebook advertising is awesome. You're paying like sometimes $1 for a really good lead to look at your content. So that's definitely a great route to think about. And you're right, we've done very little social media ads when it comes to my content agency, Express Writers. But one thing we're doing with the course that I just launched, one of the reasons that we did so well with the first launch of that course is we retargeted everyone who was on the site on Facebook. And that actually brought in the majority of the course signups. I was really surprised at that.
I'm not. Yeah.
Facebook is huge.
And it has fantastic targeting capabilities. Yes. I mean, fantastic. And same with Instagram. And now LinkedIn and Pinterest and Twitter, they're trying to catch up. Their targeting options were garbage as of a year plus ago. Just recently, they've opened it up a little bit more. So that's good, but they're still way behind Facebook on all exactly what you can target. And that goes for B2B or B2C. When Julia was B2B, and she just said it. You're B2B and B2C. So for the course, but for B2B or B2C, it works fantastic. You just got to know the ins and outs of it. Just one little caveat: do not push that boost button. that's not how you go about it. You got to do ads manager and do the higher level targeting and all of that. So just a word of the wise, the boost button is it gives you people who are going to click on it, but the targeting is just not there. So very cool. All right, let's keep going here. Let's go down to your pillar list, number 4.
Cool. Okay, so yeah. So 4 is all about storytelling, and that's where we kind of go back in time because stories have always worked, right? Like I was just talking to Joe Paluzzi a few weeks ago on my podcast, and he mentioned that Benjamin Franklin was the first content marketer with the Richard's Almanac.
That's right.
Years ago. So storytelling, you're really drawing on old principles that have kind of stood the test of time because everyone loves a good story, right? Like
they understand it.
Hours. Yes, exactly. So it's really relatable to tell a story in your marketing, and that's super important. And one thing I'm actually kind of testing right now, we're going to see how it goes. I just launched a YouTube show, and in this show, I'm kind of adding humor to some really difficult industry points. So I'm kind of telling you a story with some humor involved. Like, for example, we're kind of doing the one that launches this Saturday. It's every single Saturday. We did a cut on throwing money in the trash can, and that illustrates a point of what you could be doing by not investing in the right content types. So we're kind of like, adding some humor to it and telling a story besides just putting out a content piece on the topic. So that's what you want to think about whenever you're creating content, is how can I be really creative and tell a story about this content topic.
Can you give an example of that? I think it's somewhat easy for people to understand, yeah, tell a story. But then when they're writing a content piece, it's like, okay, wait, what? No? Can you speak on that a little bit more?
Very good question. I think that the best place you could start, especially if you're new to just putting out a story about your brand, think about your founding story. And that's what, whenever I look at brands, a lot of times they're missing out on that. So one thing that so many customers relate to is the founder's story. Like, how did you start? Where was that? Where did that come from? Like, what are your values? And a lot of people just aren't telling that story of how they started. And then when I read those stories, I myself really like brands that tell those stories. So that could be something that brands haven't tapped into yet enough, is telling their founding story. And sometimes you can even go to your team members for stories. Like, what does their day look like? What did they experience with a client last week? And then turn that into a really good story for your blog, your about page. One thing we've done is put a video story about how I started, out of nothing, on our values page. And that has gotten so many views. And we've also seen chats triggered from that page, which is really interesting.
Now, what about, and obviously content marketing is mainly not, now what you're saying, what you mentioned there, I think that's very important stuff to have on your site. Those are some cornerstone pieces, like you want to have a really in-depth services page, obviously for your products and services, your About Us or whatever page you put that on with your story. It could be compelling and could hit an emotional point. But content marketing, and where this writing mainly falls into, obviously you do probably copywriting for websites and other stuff as well. But a lot of what you do, I assume, is for content marketing plans.
Right.
Can you talk about telling a story within something that's not about, yourself or one of your employees? And again, there's a billion ways to skin this cat, right? So I mean, I'm just asking you to maybe pick out 1 or 2 examples how you turned a piece that wasn't necessarily 99% of the world, without learning from somebody like you and understanding all this, wouldn't really understand how to turn that into, or incorporate storytelling into it. Do you have any examples or advice on how, hey, look at this topic. This is something that you never in a million words would turn into a story, but look what we did with it. Do you have anything like that on top of mind?
Yeah, I would say, and this definitely sounds simple, but again, I think like a lot of businesses probably miss out on this opportunity, is whenever you're portraying your services, your products, and this really applies to retail goods. You have so much opportunity if you're a retail seller. So we had this company come to us, and we had so much fun with their products. They were like, just be creative as you want. So we looked at their products, which were actually eyelash extensions, which, you know, you can have so much fun with that product. So it really does depend on your product and how you can turn that into a story. But what we did is we kind of took a spin on a portrayal of their ideal audience member wearing them and how she felt. So we kind of told her story, and that was the product description. And it worked so well on their site when they put it on their site. I was drooling over it when it went live. It read so good. So it's like, you know, think of kind of blending that. So blending your ideal audience member, once you know who they are, exactly who they are, that's where we start. Then you have your product. So talk about your ideal reader using your product, and then like portray a story. Make that your product description. You know, test it out. If it doesn't work, you know, put back your SEO content. But trying that out, you could get way better conversion return.
Gotcha. Yeah, and on note, and again at the end of the podcast, we'll let everybody know how to follow Julia, but strongly suggest following her and learning from her, because the more you start to see examples, and you'll get it and you'll understand it better, because a lot of people hear these things over and over again. They just don't really know how to do it, and one or two little things will unlock the creativity, like, oh, now I get it. And then you could go forth and do it yourself or team up with somebody like Julia or whatever. So, okay, very cool. All right, let's keep on moving here. What's your fifth pillar of modern copywriting?
Yes, so that one is all about your content types, your content formats, and that's where I think you have to know the landscape and what content marketing is like today. So, you know, right now video and live streaming is really hot, and that wouldn't have been hot just a few years ago. So this can change super fast, really rapidly. You have to know the trends, and I definitely suggest to know the trends, follow the major platforms where these writers are on these trends within like 8 hours of a trend. So for example, one of those is Social Media Marketing World, and Social Media Examiner. I was thinking of the title of their event. So Social Media Examiner, they are on top of every social media trend. Really great platform to follow.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, so with the content types, you really want to adapt what you create to what your readers are engaging with. So really that could change and that could vary. And going back to how you found that persona, if you scroll through their social media profile, really good way to see this is to see what they share. So if they share blogs versus a video, like look at what they share the majority of content, look at what that content type is, and that'll give you some hints as to what they really like to engage with. And then you can create that format of content.
So you're basically giving advice on, you know, you have the written content, but sometimes people like to consume it in videos, audios, visuals, and think that through, you know, and see how you can splice up, you know, you're already putting all the effort into it. Now let's see what else that you can do. Is that basically what you're saying? Break up, you're already putting all this effort, now look into having it turn into other mediums as well.
Exactly. Yeah, branch out into those mediums for sure. And then, you know, there's definitely some mediums that some readers prefer. And if your audience, for example, is a super high-level executive, they may not have the time to watch a video. So you should be adding captions. Like that's something really simple.
Yes.
You do to tailor to your audience.
It's a great point. And that's something I've been telling our team about. When we have videos on Facebook, turn that part on. Yeah, that's something, you know, there's like, how many nuances are there here, right? I mean, you come across in marketing, it's just like, you just got to have your structure together, your team. You got to believe that they, you know, take it and run with it. But every now and then you're like, oh, why didn't we think about that? And I heard somebody else say it, and I was like, you're right. A lot of people are just going to be watching it sitting down somewhere, and they don't want to have the volume on. So, yeah, if you do that, it's super easy. It's literally a click of the button, and it'll say what they're saying, but in words. So, great point. And I've been trying to look up this cool tool that I gave to our team that we tried out that is awesome, and it basically you can, and she did it like in 15 minutes, and she turned a blog post into a video, and it looked amazing. And I found it. Okay, I was looking for it. Well, actually, it's a post from Social Media Examiner. How about that? How about that? So I will put that, I'm going to email it to you, Julia, so you can have for your team. It's just super cool, and it will be embedded into the blog post that we turn this into. There you go, right? Look at that. Two absolutely relevant things back to back. Yeah, because we do these, we scribe them out. We actually put it on a YouTube channel. It is our podcast, but you know, we put it as a video so that it can be distributed on Facebook and on YouTube and all of that. And we scribe it out for two reasons: SEO purposes, and number two, people like to consume content that way sometimes. So, but now it'd be super cool to take, you know, on all one step, take the content that you wrote out and, you know, use this to turn it into a video. And we tried it out, and it works phenomenally. So I'm going to send that to you, and for the audience, you know, that's one seamless way to do a written post, turn it into a video. And then now you have one cool thing about Facebook is they do cater to videos. So they let it be less cost, and you can build up a lot of awareness, a lot of traffic that way. And then, you know, strategically, as Julia's mentioned earlier, should be targeted to those visitors, because the main people that you want to be in front of that will buy from you are the people who know, like, and trust you. So you might as well spend your ad dollars there. So, all right, very cool. Do you have any last tips on that before we move on?
I think just going back to one thing you just actually touched on, podcast show notes, you know, that is, I have been surprised how far, I do the same thing on my site, right? So we have a section just for the podcast, and we kind of write show notes. So I've been surprised how far those can go. One of those show notes, it was an episode I did, one of my first 5, with Joanna Weave, got picked up on this major platform, and they quoted my show notes as a definitive resource on a term, and the term was conversion copywriting, which is huge buzzword today, right? So many people are using that term. So they quoted these show notes as the definitive resource for that term. I was really surprised. So creating show notes for, especially if you have high-level guests, you know, it's huge opportunity, and I see a lot of podcasters actually not going that content mile and creating show notes out of their episodes. And I'm like, oh, your opportunity's, you know, it's going. Grab that opportunity, create more content out of it. So repurposing.
And that's an easy one.
Right.
That's an easy one. Going from the written word to video or podcast, or that could be more difficult outside of this new thing we found. But the other way, it's a no-brainer. You do a video, you do a podcast, take the extra effort to have somebody listen and do show notes, and sometimes if it's short enough, you know, scribe out like they said this, I said this, I said this. I don't love that the most, but that's super easy way. If you know, you can find people on Fiverr or whatever that can do that for you. I don't love that format. We used to do that format. I don't like that format. We changed to do more of a synopsis, bullet, you know, points, main points versus the whole scribe out. But bottom line is, do it. Do something, because you're falling short on everything that you've already done, and it's a little bit more effort for a lot more return. And SEO, I mean, yes, alt tags, which are for videos and images, are good, but they're not near as good as somebody picking up or Google recognizing the words on your page. So very, very, very important to do that. All right, let's keep on moving here before I have to let you go, and I have a lot more to cover. So number 6.
So 6, that is all about creativity. And
love it.
That is just such an important point. It's becoming more important. You know, like, for example, AI is coming on the scene in content. And there's like thousands of AI or thousands of articles that AI is actually writing today. So if you go to like LA Times, you're going to see these articles written by bots. But the bots can't be creative, and they can't do independent creative work that a really creative writer, a really creative brand can do. So this is where, as time goes on, especially now, we have to get out of our boxes. We have to be really creative and say, you know, what kind of content is really going to stand out today? And just be that. I think Rand Fishkin gave us a really great term when he said 10 times content. So how can you be 10 times better than everyone else out there? And sometimes that comes down to your creativity and how much are you going to invest in being super creative.
And not just on the writing, right? On the visuals, on everything. And it just, my piece of advice on that from, being a business owner is let your team go. Everybody has skill sets. Don't try to think you know it all or are better at everything. If you're already thinking that, get some counseling. But in general, though, your creative people they're creative. They're different than you. They're better at that, way better than that. So one thing I've learned is I just stay away. I push and push and push for more creativity, and then I just leave them alone because I'm not creative in that way. I think I'm creative with ideas and stuff like that and strategy and that kind of creativity, but not when it comes to visuals. And I have been so impressed when, just to see what they come up with. And so just let them go, leave them alone. You never know what they're going to come up with. So don't put them in a box. Do the opposite, break down all walls. All right, the last pillar. Oh, well, on that note, Julia, what are your thoughts on that? You've been super successful business owner. You speak about creativity. What have you seen in that regard?
Well, I think it's funny we're talking about this because that's actually my 7th pillar.
All right.
So that one is all about breaking the rules to make progress and to get out of your box. And like you said, part of that really comes down to staying away whenever you hire a creative person and just letting them be super creative. And I think a really good example for this, to bring super tangible examples into it, so Wendy's has a great Twitter presence, and one thing they've done is they went and hired super intelligent millennials that just were really good at tweeting. And they found these people by looking at their Twitter. So they broke all the rules, right? They didn't look at their resume. They didn't look at experience. They just looked at, do these people really know how to tweet? And are they a millennial? They're going to do a great job. So they hired this one girl that was really good at Twitter. She had a great Twitter presence. She was funny. She was humorous. And it was all just super natural. So you could tell, this just came out of her naturally. So they hired her, and I think this was a couple of years ago, and this news story picked it up subsequently, and they said that they broke Twitter by doing this, but she tweeted back to someone who was like, hey, why don't you guys have frozen food, or they were accusing them of freezing all of their meat, and she replied back, and she had this rap style answer, and it was really good. And it was so good that it got retweeted tens of thousands of times. And the manager didn't even know it was happening till after it happened. So, he wasn't giving her the okay to tweet. She just jumped on, saw that tweet, grabbed the opportunity, and was super creative all by herself. So that's a brand that totally went outside the typical corporate boundaries of getting approval, permission, looking at resumes, etc. So they just went outside of all of that, gave true creative license to this super creative Twitter person, and then she broke their Twitter, and they went viral.
Nice.
That's a really good example of, you just got to think outside the box and be willing to go outside those typical rules to really get somewhere with your content.
Yep, absolutely. And creatives are going to work differently than you. Give them time.
Right.
Give them space. You might be returning 100 emails a day. You can't compare that to the way creatives work. They need space. They need time. They need to be left alone, and you just got to let them go. All right. Well, awesome. Semantic search. Big push to that, I guess, again, around last year-ish or more. First, can you define what that term means and then how you apply it?
Yes, absolutely. So you're right. Semantic search is it's huge right now, especially this year. This is where it's really coming up. So I think that semantic search really comes down to thinking of the study of what you say and how you say that to Google. So it's kind of linguistic in Google. And this is where you think of search as terms and phrases. So instead of optimizing for restaurant in New York City, you're going to think of what the person searches for. So they're going to search for where can I find a good restaurant? Yep. And that may include a misspelling. So maybe you want to optimize for how they write and how they search in Google versus just that keyword. So thinking of semantic search in that way as logic, linguistics, all of that is included whenever you think of semantic search.
And how do you go about knowing what people are also, or similar terms.
Yes. So semantic search is super advanced, right? Like Google is just so advanced now. They use all these algorithm signals to give you the most relevant answers. But whenever it comes back to the terms that people search for, that's where you really need a good keyword tool. And one of my favorites today to use is this newish, it's kind of newish, it was developed 2 years ago, I think, and the tool is called Keyword Finder, and it was created by Mangolds, like mango with a O-L-S at the end. Kind of weird name, weird to say. But that's the new tool that I use, and what they give you whenever you search is instant data on the keyword and then synonymous keywords that might have lower competition. So whenever you think of keywords, which is something I do, no lie, about every other day whenever I study how to create our next content piece. So your low competition keywords are just huge gold mines. And that's where you have like a 5 or 6 word string that you can create a content piece around. And the magic of that is that with Google Semantics, people are using 5 or 6 or more words whenever they search, right? Because we're all super targeted. We're looking for a restaurant, but we're not just looking for a restaurant. We're looking for our favorite type of food that we want to eat that evening. So that's what we're searching for in Google, and it's a long string. So that semantic search means that we can go after keywords that have really high opportunity, which is just awesome. And I think a lot of brick and mortars especially don't do that as much as they could. So if you create a content piece around that long tail keyword, the competition is super low, and you can rank inside a few months with a really good piece of content.
Yeah, and voice, people are searching with voice, so it's natural language. That's where all this has come about. You know, and again, this circles back to what I said a bit ago. Google's trying to do their best job, which is if they serve their customer, they're going to have advertisers who pay them, and that's why they're gargantuan. So they see people are now searching with voice. So they really mean this, you know. And an example to have everybody kind of put this into play, I think it's a fairly common example. I think we've both seen it marketing conferences, but when people look for what are those big stones in England or whatever, right? And you know, they're looking for Stonehenge, right? But you know, at the very beginning, is that where Stonehenge is England? I hope it is, or maybe not. Okay, good. Yeah, I'm not very good at stuff like that. But so at the very beginning, you know, Stonehenge, what didn't call themselves were the big rocks in England, right? But that's what people are thinking about, and you know, down the road they got referenced that enough, and they're probably now that's what comes up. So that's the kind of thing, you know. And as you said, people are going to say, you know, all various kinds of things when they're searching for a restaurant. I'm looking for this and this zip code, or you know, I'm looking for this kind of food, or I'm looking for spicy food, or this You know, all those kinds of things are what you need to be taking. If you're, well, not if, you should always have your eye on SEO when you're doing any sort of content. I'm not saying write for the bots. I'm not saying only do it for SEO, but I'm just saying if you are writing, again, just same thing as we're saying, if you're doing a piece and you can turn it, or if you're doing a video, you need to scribe it out. Same thing as if you're doing content, you need to be thinking about SEO, or else you're just not getting the most bang for your buck, be it money or bandwidth or time or whatever. So have it in mind and listen to what Julia's saying, because everything, at least who am I? But I completely validate everything you're saying, and I agree 1,000,000%. All right, we're kind of running short on time here, so I do want to kind of get some just quick answers from you on these here. What we've talked about thus far, overall modern copywriting, mainly for storytelling, for content marketing, for all of that. But obviously, copywriting has other places and other you know, other ways that you can do better at it. So would like to kind of just throw some quick questions at you and get some quick tips. Email subject lines. Do you have any tips here?
Yes. Well, I can say that one trend we've seen really work to get more open rates is adding emojis or emoticons to your headlines. And we've actually, we've had clients, no lie, contact us and say, hey, how did you get that in your headline? And it was like the emoticon actually got them to open the email. And I'm like, what about the rest of the headline? But that has worked.
What kind of emoticons?
So think about, whenever you look for one, think about your topic, right? So, for example, we had a topic, how to do your best content marketing this year. So we got the little launch emoji, like the rocket that's launching, and we put that in front of the headline. So you want to match it.
In front?
Yes, in front.
Okay.
Great place to put it. Yeah. We've tested out with at the end, but it seems to work best at the front. Get the most open.
Okay. Any word lengths, nothing like, or anything like that, or do you put their name in the subject line, or anything, any tips like that you've noticed?
So putting their name in the first line, so like if you see the
first line
in your Gmail, yes, they see their name in the preview. That works really well. And then with headline length, you want to think short because most people are on mobile, and that what grabs their attention is a really short headline these days. And we've tested that as well, and we've seen better open rates. But
okay, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
If you have to do a long headline, I'm not saying that you can't. That still works, but if you can, optimize for shorter.
Gotcha. And what about that first line you mentioned? Obviously, you can salutate the person, hey, Julia, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
What about your very first line within the body of the email? Do you have any tips there?
Yes, absolutely. So think about a hook that would get their attention, and usually that's best done in form of a question. So if you're about to talk about your latest blog out, or you're rounding up a newsletter or a podcast, give them a question that would really matter to them, like, hey, do you want to know how to improve your rankings? Or, you know, something that they're going to say yes to. So that's a really great way to start out.
Awesome. Great tips. Last big tip here, article titles. What's your advice there?
Good one. Well, that's kind of tricky because, you know, right now the negative thing out there is if you create clickbait and you over-optimize your title, you're going to get in trouble. But I think the way to combat that, what I do is optimizing the headline after I have the content written. So my first headline is just total crap. It's just a synopsis of what I'm about to write. And then after I write, I come back to that headline, and I use the headline optimizer. And my favorite one is currently the Advanced Marketing Institute's Headline Analyzer. And Dave, I can get you a link for that if you'd like.
Please do. Yeah, we'll include it in the post. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that is my favorite optimizer, and it'll tell you exactly what emotions you're hitting with your headline. So if you try to get 40% or higher emotional value, you're going to get more clicks. And we've seen that happen. Like, we've seen our click rate jump to, or our share rate jump to 100% more because that headline hit 40% on the scale. So it really does work.
Yeah, and if some people, you know you already, I'm a little guilty of this myself. I normally, if I put it in my own social feed, that means I've read it, you know, and I've signed off on it, you know, to put on my social feeds, you know. So I never tweet any or post anything out from my social channels, but I will sometimes retweet somebody that I trust already if it looks like a topic that's awesome before I read it. On retweets, again, if I actually put it in my scheduler, it's been read. But if I retweet sometimes, and a lot of it is just, you know, who it's coming from and how engaging that topic is, I'm like, yeah, this is going to be, I trust them. I know it's going to be good because I've read 100 pieces from them already. And it's sometimes just the article title is what you go with. And I've heard other people say that too. You know, image and article titles sometimes all people look at when they retweet something. So it's very important. So definitely send that headline analyzer over. We'd love to include that in the post. All right. Before I have to let you go, any big predictions you see in the future in regards to copywriting?
I think that, you know, we're going to have to be aware of AI and what's coming with automation, but that shouldn't scare the writer off. Like, that doesn't mean we're going to lose our jobs.
No.
Anytime soon. Like, that's not going to happen. It just means we have to really go outside the box whenever we get creative. And we have to think, okay, what can I create that a robot will never be able to create?
Yeah.
That's how to do really well. And I think that's going to be more and more true going forward.
The AI is going to facilitate writers and marketing and all of that. I think we're real close to figuring out how. I'm starting to hear some rumblings of like, okay, here's how you can literally use it now, but barely though. But it's coming. It's coming fast. All right. Well, very cool. Any parting thoughts? And also, please let everybody know how they can continue to learn from you.
Absolutely. Well, I'm really grateful you invited me on. And to catch my content, I am Julia E. McCoy almost everywhere, except YouTube. I wasn't able to get my middle initial, so I'm just Julia McCoy on YouTube.
Okay.
That's how you can find me. And I just launched a YouTube show last Saturday. It's going to be every single Saturday, and that's our new direction we're trying to head in with our content, is to add video and a storytelling touch. So that's what those episodes are all about.
Awesome. And it's expresswriters.com, correct?
That's right. That's my agency.
Okay, awesome. All right, Julia, this was a blast, and I feel like we gave the listeners and the readers a lot of take-homes, like relevant take-homes that they can go and apply and become better copywriters. So thank you so much for your insight, and until next time.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the latest podcast. Feel free to go to magnificent.com/blog to see the show notes for this interview, as well as those from many other of the world's top marketing experts. Have a great day.